Hey guys, as I'm sure many of you are aware, I wrote a short adventure for DC 20 entitled Halloween Havoc. You may have seen me run this for a bunch of content creators. In case you missed that, I'll put a card in the attached to the YouTube video, and I hope you'll check that out if you didn't. But before I make this available outside of our Patreon, I wanted to go over my design thoughts and walk you through the module step by step. So that's the goal of this video. And as you see, I have the title screen up, Halloween Havoc, along with my splash page if it was going to be run on VTT. Scrolling on down, this is the intro portion that I read to the players. You have spent the day just like every other day, working hard on the farm to provide for your family. While you spent the days toiling, you have dreams of bigger things. You have spent your time training, possibly learning the ways of combat maneuvers and the intricacies of striking with weapons. Maybe you've been training in the arcane ways of spellcasting, staying up late poring over your books, casting cantrips such as light to provide a way to read long after the sun has gone down. Yet still you might have been dabbling in both sword and sorcery. Either way, you dream of the day that you'll be able to rise above your lowly station as a farmhand. That calling to adventure is closer than you realize, as Halloween Havoc is about to be upon you. So, for the first adventure that I've ever taken the time to write out an outline for, I'm pretty proud of it. So I have a table of contents, which includes running the adventure that begins on page 3. It talks about character creation, novice level character creation, and where you can find the monster stat blocks, as well as a link to the Dungeon Coach's website to pick up the DC 20 magazines that you would need, plus the story so far. Section 2 is the opening scene, starting on page 4, which includes a character introduction, a work skill challenge, the introduction of the witch in the witch scene, the scarecrow combat, and the cornfield resolution. I should note that the scarecrow combat is the birthplace of Shyla Crow. Long live Shyla Crow. Uh, Section 3 is the tunnel scene. Starting on page 7, the witch flies off. There is the giant rat combat and an addendum if your PCs decide to climb instead of taking the tunnel. Then there's the cliff scene, section 4, starting on page 10, beginning with a fate roll, then a combat skill challenge, leading into a combat with some goblins. Finally, section 5, the witch's cottage scene, starting on page 13, which has a witch cutscene, the zombie combat, and then the witch's surrender and the conclusion of the adventure. Quick disclaimer that DC 20 was created by the Dungeon Coach. DC 20 rules can be found at thedungeoncoach.com. That you'll need DC 20 Magazine issue 3 in order to run this adventure. Monster stat blocks and rules for character creation are in the DC 20 Magazine. The witch uses the stat block for Shadow from the short adventure The Hunted. The Hunted comes with the alpha rules, which can be purchased for 50 cents. Although the stat block I used was from the updated version of The Hunted, but really either version of Shadow is fine. It's just that the updated stat block is cleaner and easier to use. Short adventure created by me as part of Roll with SDMs. And then a bunch of our links for our Patreon, our website, our Start Playing, if you wanted to join any of our games, our YouTube channel, and our family business, Top Notch Ceramic Trees. I'll see, maybe I can get a card for that too. I did recently post a video displaying our booth in our mall kiosk. So, as we continue on, we get to running the adventure. The first thing you will need to do is get your players together to create characters. Follow the rules in DC 20 Magazine Issue 3. For the story, it works best if the PCs are part of the farmer's family, but can also be farmhands. Corn is the mainstay of the farm, and it's time to start harvesting it. Key features of the adventure. There's a variable difficulty in that each encounter and skill challenge scales to the number of players. So you could run this for as little as one, although, I mean, obviously TTRPGs work better with, say, somewhere between 3 and 5. Box text, text in italics is meant to be read to the players. And there's a full complement of maps. The maps are referenced within this document, as well as being a part of the zip file if you are looking to run this yourself. The maps are very good for VTT, and only one of the maps I would recommend using dynamic lighting. The others don't need it. So, and truthfully, even the one that I recommend using it, if you were to just have the monsters in the GM layer until they were visible to the enemies, to the players, that would be fine too. Or maybe use Fog of War is another option. So, the story so far. So this is not meant to be read to the players, but I reference it at the end when the witch gives the details as to what happened and why she did what she did. So the story so far is there was a couple who lived in a cottage on a cliffside. The wife, Olga, was an herbalist who was studying the magical properties of plants. Her husband, Edgar, was a hunter and provided for his family. One night, Edgar came home grievously injured. Olga did everything she could to try to save her husband. Her cries were heard for miles as Edgar breathed his last. In her desperation to bring her husband back from the dead, Olga reached out for her magical powers that she had been studying. A dark power flowed through Olga, and it channeled through her and into Edgar's body. Edgar rose from the ground. Not quite alive, Edgar was now undead. In that moment of desperation, the dark energies flowed into the graves as well, raising several of their ancestors. The dark power concentrated in Edgar's, causing his body to house the magic power that Olga now wielded. Disgusted by what Edgar had become and how the power corrupted her too, Olga set out to find a way to reverse the situation. Her first target, the farmhouse nearby. So again, the point of this, the story so far, is to let the GM know what the motivation of the witch is and give them something to explain to the players during the conclusion. So we continue on. We'll get to scene number 1. So here is the beautiful cornfield map, and then the opening scene. Map notes the farmhouse is to the southwest. So off this side of the road, you can see like where the mouse is circling. When selecting the location of the scarecrows, randomly place them in the cornfield. I would not use dynamic lighting on this map. Have the players place their tokens on the map where they're working. Let them move about the map during the work skill challenge. Place the enemy tokens on the map when combat begins. This way there's a random nature to where the players are in relation to the scarecrows. So if you watched the live play, I had little scarecrow markers in the field. Like I think there was 8 or 9 of them spread out in a circle around here. I did not include them on this map because I wanted you to be able to put them wherever you wanted, but I just used like a generic scarecrow image that I used. Did not look like an enemy token as a placeholder for where the enemies could be. And then I knew, say, for the live play, I was going to have 4 players, and the adventure calls for 5, in that case, 5 scarecrows. So I randomly decided which of those 8 or 9 were going to have were going to be animated, and then in the GM layer, I put those tokens. So that would be my recommendation. If you were going to play this in person and you were just going to use this map as like a guide, I would draw out the cornfield, and then you can mark on there where there are scarecrows. And then I think it's more fun to let fate decide things. So I would just randomly pick which of the markers that you put are going to animate. And then if you're playing on a VTT or even in person, you would have them put their tokens on the map. Usually, like I would say, somewhere along the road, and then let them move their tokens around the map as they're doing their introductions, as they're doing their work skill challenge. This way, they're dispersed throughout the map. When I did the live play, the one guy was up here. That was Brandon from Bardic Aggravation. He was chopping down wood. We had Shyla before she was Shyla Crow over here, distracted by a beetle. And then we had Angela and Digby working in the field. Digby trying to heal the crops because how dare we cut them down. So, again, it was a good stream. If you didn't see it, I'd recommend checking it out. So character introductions. Have the players introduce their characters. Ask them what tasks they're doing to try to harvest the corn. Don't get too bogged down at this point. Use this for easing the players into the setting and the narrative. And once the PCs are introduced and acting in the scene, then introduce Farmer Branston. So the point of this is kind of taking inspiration from The Hunted, where all the players introduce their characters and there's a little bit of team building and scene setting. So my goal with this was to let the players get comfortable in their characters and the scene. And then we get to the farmer. So this is what my box text looks like for this adventure. So farmer says, how's it going? It's getting late in the afternoon. I wanted to make sure you were making progress and that you would be home for dinner in a few hours. A man's voice calls from the cornfield road. So as a tip, let the players interact with him, giving you a little bit of insight into him, that he's a kind man, fair yet firm, and whether father or boss, the PC should like him. So you want to kind of make him likable. And this is one of those instances where the DM's better to ad lib their own interaction with him rather than me giving box text. But, a little bit of box text just to get the scene going. I'll let the players interact with him a little bit until you're ready to do the conclusion of that scene. And you have the box text there to end the scene with, I don't want to take up your time. I'll just stay for a moment and see what you're working on. That leads, as you can see, into the work skill challenge. So also, like in The Hunted, there is a low-key skill challenge, social skill challenge, where you're trying to impress Eugene. This works very similarly in that the stakes are low, and the only thing to the loss or victory in this challenge is how much rewards you'll get in the end, with extra rewards on top for every five, for every additional success above what's needed. So, as I stated earlier, everything in this adventure scales. So the success points needed is equal to the number of PCs. Um, Also, taken from Alan's work with The Hunted, in that that's how all of his challenges are written, and I think it's brilliant. Big time shout out to the dungeon coach, because you see a lot of DCs and challenges in other games, like maybe D&D and that, where it's a set number. Like the difficulty doesn't scale based on how many players, and that ability it's brilliant. So, challenge DC is 10 for this. Um, the save DC for these novice level characters is 12. Alan, in his rules for skill challenges, said that an easy challenge is one lower than the save DC, on point with the save DC for moderate, and one above for a hard difficulty, which makes sense because that save DC is going to be based on whatever their bonus is. In this case, at novice level, it's +2 for like their attacks and stuff. So in their limited capacity, a 12 would be moderate. Where, say, a level 1 character with a 14 as a save DC, 14 would be moderate. So that the DC scales with the characters, but in this case, that's for novice, which is why I went with 10. Now, again, 11 would be easy. Why did I go with 10? Because I wanted to introduce the players to the skill challenge in an even easier way, and the stakes are incredibly low. As you'll see when we get to the resolution, um, they're really just trying to show Farmer Branston what they're working on, and there is no like real danger or anything along those lines. So, challenge DC 10. As I recall in the streamed one shot, they did succeed, but just barely. There was a crit fail, which cost them 1 point, and somebody had gained 3 successes, and another player had gained 2 successes, which was 5. They needed 4, and with that crit fail, they ended up with just the 4 that they needed. So the challenge rules, this kind of sets the scene that the PCs are attempting to show their father how good they are at their job. Each player describes what they're doing to impress their father. After you find out what each player wants to do narratively, have them make one check using a relevant skill. Success in each 5, they gain a success point, plus an additional success point on a critical success. Failure, they get no success points, and critical failure, they lose 1 success point. The resolution, when the challenge is over, note the party's success level. After the first combat, the party receives the following based on the number of success points that they've earned. Either way, narrate how impressed or concerned Branston is with his kids. So, if they fail the challenge, he would obviously be concerned that they're not going to finish their work in time for dinner, and they're going to disappoint Mama. If they meet the challenge, they get their 4 success points, then he's relatively pleased and thinks that everything will be fine. If they blow the challenge out of the water, then he's like extremely happy, and you just kind of scale his response. But he doesn't give these rewards until later, and you'll see why. However, I will go over what happens. If they succeed, then they get a number of healing potions equal to the number of players. If they fail, so it'll be the third line there, they get a number of healing potions equal to half the number of PCs round up. And for each extra success, they get an additional piece of equipment. It can be a mundane weapon, a buckler, a torch, 50 feet of rope, a 10-foot pole, or some other mundane equipment that you choose. The reason is that novice characters only start with light novice armor and one weapon. So this gives them the opportunity to have a second weapon, a buckler, um, some other piece of equipment that may or may not come into play, but you really, this was a way that I could get those extra pieces of equipment into their hands. But there's a very good reason that they don't get this equipment yet, and you'll see as we continue on. So Father Branson leaves, and then after a little bit, the PCs here they're nearing the end of their workday, and they hear a scream from the farmhouse. Then a whoosh overhead, followed by cackling. Magic dust falls on the cornfield, and the scarecrows animate. Have the players stop moving their tokens and roll for initiative. So during the skill challenge, and then even up to this point, it's good to let them keep moving their tokens around the map, because when you trigger this and you stop them from moving and have them roll for initiative, they are at a random point in the map with no idea which scarecrows are going to animate, and it just builds a really cool scene. So the scarecrow combat, the encounter DC is 10, the initiative DC is 15. Number of scarecrows equals the number of players plus 1, and you should use the animated training dummy stat block from DC 20 magazine number 3. Now, why that initiative DC and that encounter DC? Well, I wanted this to be a pretty easy combat. Dungeon Coach has said that the initiative DC is usually 5 higher than the encounter DC. The encounter DC is if somebody wanted to try to do something in the scene and you wanted to set a quick DC. So, 10 would be that DC. And then the initiative DC is what's needed to win the initiative. I use the 0.9 upcoming initiative rules, which is just an attack check. So their rolls were only +2. However, 15, even at +2, is not too difficult to meet. And only one of the 4 players needs to get above 15 in order to go first. And then it alternates back and forth anyway. So it works out pretty good. One thing that's noteworthy here is that the animated training dummy, I'm not going to go too much into the stats because that's part of a DC 20 magazine, but the animated training dummy has a movement speed of 1 space. So depending on where the players end up when they roll for initiative, these scarecrows are going to be very slow getting to the players. Unfortunately for Shyla Crow, what happened was she was kind of in an area where she could be surrounded by herself, and she did end up surrounded, hit a couple times, and then crit on when she was, I think, down to 3 hit points. And the next video that I want to do is actually on how deadly DC 20 can be in comparison to D&D, which is notorious for yo-yoing their characters, and Pathfinder 2nd Edition, which talks a good game about how deadly it is. But in neither system are you like in danger of being one shot just because you're at 1 or 2 hit points. And in DC 20, if you're at 1 or 2 and you die at -2 or -3, you have a really good chance of just outright being killed. And there is the option to call it non-lethal and not actually kill the player, but the player's character. But anyway, that's a topic for another video because there's a lot that I could go into on that. So look for that one over the next couple days. And as I continue down, um, they fight that combat, and then there's the cornfield resolution. So Farmer Branson comes rushing into the field, out of breath and visibly shaken, saying, "She's gone! Oh God, she's gone!" Branson exclaims, "What can possibly be done now?" So you let the players interact with him again. I don't like to fill you up with box text for that kind of stuff. Like I'll give you something to start the scene, but then it really is better if the DM can embody that character in that scene, playing off of whatever the uh, PCs decide to say to him. Um, What he knows is that a charming young woman came to the door. He felt compelled to let her in. Once in, she turned Mama Branston into a toad. The woman grabbed the toad, stuck it in a pouch, got on her broom, and flew out the door. He had wanted to stop the lady, but he felt paralyzed and could not move until she was gone. And then he offers the reward from the skill challenge. So the reason for not giving those rewards earlier is these rewards from that skill challenge are going to A, help the party in their quest, and B, um, it's kind of in the story that he quickly gathered up these, few items, few healing potions and stuff, and brought them to you. Uh, it just story wise makes more sense that you're rewarded for that skill challenge here. So there is a little bit of box text to end the scene. You really think you can save Mama Branston? That is really brave of you, but I can't let you leave unprepared like this. You should take these provisions. And it's details here. The provisions include a first aid kit, a number of healing potions equal to what the party earned, a bag of Mama's cookies, 12 cookies, as well as any extra gear that they may have earned. Um, if they earned extra gear, tell the players how many pieces they can have and ask them what they would like. Give them examples provided during the challenge. And Branson will urge the party to make haste if they are going to save Mama. So, we've kind of set the scene. We've given them a bag of cookies, which what I did is gave a temporary hit point for eating one of Mama's cookies. But as a DM, you could award them whatever kind of bonus you think makes sense. And the first aid kit also important because it's a way that they can potentially heal themselves outside of the potions. And it's something else that Farmer Branston would have probably scooped up as he made his way out to the field. Then we get into scene number 2, which is this lovely cliff scene with the players starting down here. And the tunnel scene, right? And then there's the tunnel. One important thing, I'll mention it while the map is up, is you want to detail that this is not a dark cave. It's a tunnel, and they can see daylight through the other side. It makes them more likely to want to go through the tunnel. The first time I ran this as a test play for some friends, they decided that rather than going through the tunnel, they were going to scale the cliff. So you'll see in here that there is that addendum about scaling the cliff, and I'll explain the thought process of my recommendation on how to run that. So the tunnel scene, again, you start with the PCs at the bottom of the map. They find themselves in this area with sheer cliffs and a tunnel. Be sure to describe the tunnel as a tunnel that they can see through and not a cave. The goal is to get the PCs to go through the tunnel. Set the witch on the top of the cliff and have her fly off as soon as the PCs arrive. The witch should fly over the tunnel to entice the PCs to go through it. The encounter on this map is with giant rats who come out of the tunnel. If the PCs decide to climb the cliff instead of going through the tunnel, have them position their tokens where they plan to climb. Before they can climb, have the rats come and attack. Details for how to handle the climbing the cliff will be detailed at the end of this section, and it does alter the next map. Dynamic lighting not recommended. So I put the witch up here, and then I have her fly off that way over the tunnel. So there's some box text to set the scene. You follow the witch's flight direction and find yourselves in a valley surrounded by cliffs. A tunnel stands before you. On the top of the cliff, you spot the witch. Seemingly surprised to see you, she quickly mounts her broom and flies off over the tunnel. Looking into the tunnel, you can see that it's a short passage, and you are able to see the other side from your current position. So all of that box text should help to alleviate the issue of the PCs thinking that it's a cave, and enticing them to just go through it. When the PCs approach the tunnel, have the giant rats attack. If the PCs decide to climb the cliff instead of going through the tunnel, start the combat as described in the map notes. The encounter DC here, 11, and the initiative DC 16. So a cool thing that I did with this adventure is I kept stepping the encounter DC and the initiative DC up by 1, so that the challenge ratcheted up a little bit as it went. So I want to go back to the map quick. So my recommendation again is have the PCs start their tokens here. Have them, if they're going to go through the tunnel, have them approach the tunnel. And when they get within like this area here, then I would have them stop. And I would put the giant rats on the map inside the tunnel on their way out, and then have them roll for initiative. The nice thing with this is that it allows like a little bit of randomness to, who's in the lead, where are people positioned. So the number of giant rats equals the number of PCs. So the animated training dummy, the stat block for that is very weak. In comparison, the giant rat is not quite as weak. So that's why the scarecrows were like number of PCs plus 1, and the giant rats are just equal to the number of PCs. This should be a pretty straightforward combat with giant rats. Be careful how many giant rats you choose to activate at one time. Against novice characters, it can get out of their control fast if you activate more than one. When the PCs finish this combat, they may wish to take a quick rest in order to spend rest points or heal. Otherwise, they will likely continue through the tunnel and on to the next map. So, another thing that I usually do with this combat is a hit and run strategy from the rats. They come running out of the tunnel, they attack the players on their way through, and then they just continue past. They have an ability to disengage and move as a single action. So that's what I was having them do. It did lead to some interesting story bits as far as were they afraid of something else in the tunnel, something on the other side of the tunnel. It left a little bit of intrigue. So here is if your PCs climb instead of taking the tunnel. If the PCs decide to climb instead of going through the tunnel, run the following skill challenge. This will also change the combat on the next map. Use this skill challenge in place of the one listed in the next chapter and see the modifications to that combat situation in the next chapter. So you would run the rat combat, but the rats would attack the players as they were standing at the bottom of the cliff waiting to climb. After that combat, you would do this cliff climbing skill challenge. So the challenge for this one is 12, so this is stepped up to a moderate challenge. And the success points is then equal to the number of players. So in this case, for the live stream, it would have been 4. Noteworthy that they didn't initially climb the cliff. They went through the tunnel. there's a combat skill challenge that was mentioned in the table of contents, and they royally botched that. So they retreated, decided to climb the cliff. Since they had already done one of the combat skill challenges, I let them narrate how they climbed the cliff, which they had really interesting and creative way of doing. I just let them do it. But if they decide to climb instead of going through the tunnel, this replaces the combat skill challenge in the next section. And it's very similar anyway, just narratively different, but the way that it works is very similar. So the PCs are attempting to climb a sheer cliff face. Ask them how they plan to accomplish this. Most likely it will require athletics to climb unless they have another creative solution. Providing help is another option. Remember that anyone helping will pass or fail based on the check of the person who's making the attempt. Also, anyone helping either needs to be trained in athletics or whatever skill is being used for the check. A PC can use rope to help without being trained in athletics. So they wouldn't have rope unless they did good in the first challenge and got rope, or somehow ended up with rope. But the other thing that I want to point out here is that technically, by the current rules of DC 20, helping in a skill challenge is not permitted in the way that I have it described here. For here, the people who are helping are rolling a D8 and adding it to somebody's check. Their fate is tied to that person's fate, and if that person fails, the person who was helping fails too. I really like that. The current way of doing it is you can narratively say that you're helping, but you make your own check. Um, I don't know, something really calls to me about tying your fate to somebody else. Yes, you will likely help that person succeed, but if you help and you roll an 8 on your help die and they roll a 1, they still crit failed. So, I mean, maybe you can get them up to a success and then the crit fail will still cause, like a point of damage as you see here, but, um, you're both getting scuffed up, banged up. Anyway, just noteworthy that if you run the skill challenges the way that they're currently ruled, you would not be using help in the sense of adding a D8 in that. But if you choose to run it the way that I have it laid out here, that's how that would work. So, success in each 5, the party gets a success point, plus 1 success point on a critical success. Failure in each 5, the PC takes 1 bludgeoning damage, plus 1 damage for critical failure. Resolution. When the challenge is over, note the party's success level. Using the player's results, describe the PC's journey up the cliff. If no one failed, describe the ease at which they climbed. If anyone failed, describe them getting banged up on rocks or possibly falling. Either way, it's assumed that the party has the time and ability to climb the cliff. Success as a group, no additional damage from the climb. Failure, each PC that failed the check takes an additional point of bludgeoning damage. The point of this is to rough up the players before the next combat, and that's taken into account when we get to that combat. So here's the cliff scene. As you can see, they would be coming through the tunnel and entering the map this way here. There are stairs that go up, and if they go through the tunnel, I had 2 goblins up here at the top, and they were throwing pumpkins down on the players. So you'll see that in the combat skill challenge. For this map, I do recommend dynamic lighting or fog of war. You could also just hide the goblins until you need them. But if I were doing dynamic lighting in the way that I did it, is I put dynamic lighting as you see where my mouse is going. I put it like up this cliff, along this here, down the stairs, and then up this side and across up this way. So, and then I used one-way dynamic lighting wall for the top, so that from the top you could see down, but from the bottom you couldn't see where the goblins were. Uh, Once you got up onto the stairs, you could start to see them. But so I'm not gonna like go into all that again, but in the map notes it'll say that if possible, use dynamic lighting with one-way walls. Um, if not possible, hide the goblin tokens until after the skill challenge. The scene includes a fate roll, a skill challenge, and a combat with the goblins. If the PCs climb the cliff instead of going through the tunnel, skip to the end of this chapter to see how to modify the encounter. The beginning of this chapter assumes the PCs have entered the map from the tunnel. So if they climb instead, then they would enter right up here. Um, One thing that I did is I had both the goblins still here waiting to throw pumpkins. It was pretty cool, but I felt like they got cheated out of the combat in the sense that um, Shiloh Crow just ran in and shoved them off the cliff. I mean, it's still cool, but I have added a recommendation at the end of this chapter to, if the party climb, have one near the cliff and have one a little bit away from the cliff, maybe, maybe even if he's sitting on the ground or something. But this way, they can't both be shoved off in one shot. I will say though that when Charlotte Crow did shove them both off, you know, she made one shove straight and one shove at disadvantage, and she still managed to succeed them both. So, way to go, Charlotte Crow. So it starts with a fate roll and then this box text. So as you step out of the tunnel, please make a fate roll. That is a flat d20 roll that is used to determine the narrative. Then the PC with the lowest fate roll. You tell them you take 1 point of bludgeoning damage as a pumpkin hits you in the head. To the party. Looking up, you see goblins ready to throw more pumpkins your way. You have seconds to react. How do you respond? So that leads into the combat skill challenge. Same DC as the cliff climbing one, 12, with same number of success points, the number of players. The goal of this is the same as the cliff one, to rough them up before the fight with the goblins. So the PCs are attempting to avoid taking more damage as pumpkins are being thrown at them. Ask the PCs to describe what they're doing to avoid the damage. This can include running into the middle of the lower area and attacking the goblins. Remember that they are not trying to hit the goblins PDMD. They're attempting to beat the challenge DC. Remind the PCs to think outside the box. They're not limited to 4 action points. If someone wishes to rush to the steps of the to the top of the cliff, have them make it onto the steps after the challenge. It's also noteworthy that spells don't cost mana for skill challenges. Their effects are just there for narrative. So, like casting Misty Step to attempt to dodge pumpkins is perfectly valid for a spellcaster. Although for this, they wouldn't have access to Misty Step because they can only, if they're a spellcaster or hybrid, they only have 1 or 2 cantrips. But just as an example, for skill challenges in general, they also would not be trying to hit that DC 20 for Misty Step. It would be just trying to beat the challenge DC of 12. Just like before, success in each 5, they get a success point +1 on a critical success, and a failure in each 5, they take 1 point of bludgeoning damage +1 for a critical failure. So you just narrate them getting pummeled with pumpkins, which is exactly what happened during the skill challenge. There were so many failures and critical failures, and they got beat up so bad, taking 2, 3, 4 damage. I think one of them even took 5 damage. There was no way that they could fight the goblins in that condition. I totally did not expect them to get that banged up, and never in any of my other runnings of this adventure did that happen. So the resolution, again, success, no additional damage from the pumpkins, and failure, each PC that failed takes an additional point of bludgeoning damage. So not only did they fail, most of them fail, and I think there was even a crit failure. But the group failed and they took even more damage. Because they were getting roughed up from the combat skill challenge, the actual goblin combat is meant to be easier in the sense that, well, the DC is higher, 12 and 17. The number of goblins is only equal to half the number of PCs rounded up and use the goblin stat block. So, um, there's not a lot of goblins. They're not that difficult for, say, in this case, a party of four to kill two of these goblins. Not very difficult, really. Um, but they were just potentially roughed up during the combat skill challenge and now have to rush upstairs in order to get to them or to get a really good shot on them. Because as you can see at the top of the cliff, they're going to have three-quarters cover from anyone attacking from the bottom. And if they're halfway up the stairs, then the cover is only half. Um, one thing that I have here is have the goblins switch from throwing pumpkins to their short bows as combat starts. If they need to, they can switch to their melee weapons. They can full disengage and move for 2 action points. This makes them challenging foes. They likely will not want to be pinned down. Um, I think I usually have them keep throwing pumpkins until it makes sense for them to switch to a bow. Um, it's just cool having them throw pumpkins, very on brand for Halloween. And then here is if the players climb the cliff instead of going through the tunnel. So your PCs decided to scale a cliff instead of walking through a short tunnel. Have you have replaced the combat skill challenge with the cliff climbing skill challenge. This will offer a similar challenge with the same risk of being roughed up before the combat. Have the PCs start in the top center of the map. Have the PCs make a fate roll versus the encounter DC. If they succeed, grant them advantage on their initiative. If they fail by 5 or more, impose disadvantage on their initiative. So I wanted to still have a fate roll, and I thought this was a neat way to go ahead and have one. So everybody makes a fate roll, and they're rolling versus the encounter DC. So they're rolling against this 12. The key here is that if they succeed, so if on this fate roll somebody, any of the players that get a 12 or better, they have advantage on their initiative. If they fail by 5 or more, then they get disadvantage on their initiative. So if they get a 7, uh, and if they fail but don't fail by 5 or more, then nothing happens. So they can get an 8, a 9, a 10, or an 11, and nothing. Like they just roll a normal initiative. But if they get a 7 or worse, uh, then they'll have disadvantage, and on a 12 or higher, advantage. So I thought it was a really interesting way to um, have the fate roll and have it do something cool. So the goblins are likely going to be more defensive, having the PC so close to them at the start of the combat. Take that into account in their tactics, using their duck and dive ability as often as needed. It's unlikely that they would give up the high ground. Make sure at least one goblin is not right at the cliff edge. One of them probably should be, as they would not be expecting the PCs to climb and attack from behind. So that's the addendum that I had to add after that, just to make sure that at least one of the goblins is left to fight. And after the combat, the PCs may need to rest. They will also spot the witch's cottage off to the top left side of the map. They'll likely want to rush off and confront the witch. So just to go back to that map quick, the witch's cottage is off this way. Okay. So then we get to chapter 4, or like the section 4, the witch's cottage scene and the witch cut scene. So I usually start the witch here with Edgar here. I usually have a zombie here and a zombie here, but it kind of depends on, how many players, as you'll see. The PCs approach this map from the bottom left. The witch is in front of the cottage door. Her husband, represented by a zombie, is next to her. The other zombies are near their gravestones. It's recommended not to use dynamic lighting for this map. And when the PCs are on the map, read the box text below. So the PCs start over here. And they have to travel up. And when you approach the witch's cottage, she looks up at you and shrieks. Do you really think you can stop me from correcting the hand that fate has dealt me? Now your fate shall be the same as my beloved. Seize them, she exclaims as the zombies lurch forward. The witch gets on her broom and flies into the air. The zombie that was standing nearest to her cracks his knuckles. He appears stronger as crackling energy ripples through his decaying flesh. That represents Edgar being different than the other zombies, and that crackling energy that Olga is wielding, that it is contained within him. So the zombie combat, which is the final combat, the encounter DC again is crept up by 1 to 13. The initiative DC has crept up to 18. The enemies, you have one witch, one Edgar zombie, and regular zombies equal to half the number of PCs round up. So when I ran this for 3 players, it was the witch, Edgar, and 2 zombies, because half the number of players was 1.5, round up is 2. And when I ran it for 4, it was the same 2 zombies, Edgar, and the witch. The reason for this is you have the witch, you have Edgar, and you just want enough zombies to smooth over the combat. So I thought that half was appropriate. The regular zombies do get beat up pretty quick. Even Edgar, he's only slightly stronger than the others. The big wild card in this fight is the witch. Largely, she is not really meant to be killed, as you'll see. And so when we look at her like operating procedure, you'll see like what she should do in the fight. Now, oh, right. Use the stat block for Shadow from the Hunted for the Witch. On her broom, she has a fly speed of 7. Use the zombie stat block for the regular zombies. Modify the zombie stat block for Edgar as follows. Edgar's HP is 10. His might is 2. His might save is +3. His athletics is +4. And he has a grapple attack enhancement. So the witch will spend her time flying over the combat. Her priorities in the combat are as follows. First priority, protect Edgar. At all costs, she will protect Edgar. She'll attack anyone who is actively attacking her husband. If he is injured, she will prioritize healing him above all of the other zombies. If that's not the case, then she will support the other zombies. So if Edgar's not being attacked, she'll circle the battlefield out of melee reach of the PCs and heal the other zombies as needed. If none of the zombies need healing, she'll target the PCs with Umbral Flame. And if a spellcaster casts a spell, she will attempt to spell duel them as often as she can, or it makes sense to. So this is a big, like, oh my goodness moment when, a player casts Sacred Flame on Edgar or one of the other zombies, and she spell duels you to attempt to counter it. The zombies will attack the PCs unrelentingly. Even Edgar has no sense of self-preservation. Edgar will try to attack first with his infected ability, followed by an attack using his grapple ability. If Edgar's destroyed, the witch loses her powers and her broom sinks to the ground. She will immediately surrender. So that's the resolution that I expect. It's the resolution that I got all 3 times that I've run it. Although last time it was very sketchy. Shyla Crow kept shooting with a trip maneuver, and had she tripped and knocked her off of her broom, the fall might have killed her. And if it didn't kill her, it would have drastically altered the situation. So just something to keep in mind. But ideally, she is largely out of danger, flying around, healing the zombies, attacking if needed, and then spell dueling as appropriate. So she's the boss, but not the boss. Like, she's there really just to kind of be that uh, commander of the fight that you wouldn't expect. Because you wouldn't expect a novice level character to get spell dueled or healing the zombies. Uh, so the witch surrender in conclusion. So I have her once Edgar dies. Um, she descends to the ground. I stop the combat. She runs over and like puts her head on his chest. What have you done, my poor Edgar? You killed my poor Edgar, the witch cries out. She runs over to him, putting her hand on his chest. I can't heal him. Why can't I heal him anymore? She puts her head onto his chest and sobs uncontrollably. From a bag next to the cottage door, Mama Branston rises as she is restored to her normal form. Mama's confused and croaks in between her interactions with PCs. So at this point, you can have the PCs interact with Mama. You can have the PCs interact with the witch. Mama, again, she's gonna like reply, and then maybe in the middle of her replies from here and there, she's gonna croak because she's been a frog for a while. And for the witch, she's gonna be completely subservient. At this point, as they're interacting with her, she's going to tell them the story so far, so from the beginning. So you might have to flip back to there. And then also, she gives us information that um, that her name is Olga, the story of how Edgar died and she was trying to bring him back to life. She kidnapped Mama because she wanted her magic necklace. Olga explains that she was drawn to the healing power of the necklace. Olga had hoped that the necklace could restore her dear Edgar. She charmed Branston but could not charm Mama. So she turned Mama into a toad and ran off with her, never expecting that she would be caught. After the party decides what to do with Olga, they return to the farmhouse. The next day, Farmer Branston will suggest that they all sit down to a warm meal prepared by Mama in thanksgiving for their bravery, the bravery that the PC showed in saving their family. The end. So that is the short adventure Halloween Havoc that I wrote. I hope you found this interesting. I hope you found this helpful. After I post this video, I'm going to be sharing this adventure as a zip file on Dungeon Coach on his Discord channel. As well, I may try to find another channel to provide it to you guys. I'd like to get it into as many hands as possible, and um, this is just the beginning. In November, this month, the week of Thanksgiving, we're looking to do a follow-up, which is dubbed Thanksgiving Troubles, and it will have the player characters leveled to 0. They'll have gone from here out to pursue their greater calling, becoming level 0, learning some of whatever class they are choosing, and then they'll be coming home for Thanksgiving to Thanksgiving Troubles. And then I have Christmas Chaos planned as well around Christmas time, which will be another one shot where after Thanksgiving Trouble, the characters will go back to the training, come back for Christmas as level 1 characters, And of course, you have to have some kind of drama, or you don't have a game. So um, anyway, you can look for those. Halloween Havoc, I'm gonna try to just give out for free now to the community. It was only available to our patrons of the D6 tier or higher. Um, Currently, um, it's been a month, so I'm going to make it available now to a wider audience. And Thanksgiving Trouble, though, Christmas Chaos, probably going to again offer that to our patrons. So if you want early access to those, you could join our Patreon. And then I'll probably sell those on Drive-Thru RPG for a small price, probably. But I think that's what I'm probably going to do with Thanksgiving Troubles and Christmas Chaos. Anyway, thanks for bearing with us on the uh, lack of content lately. It's been a lot of work getting our personal ornament retail business up and running for the season. And I'm going to try to get out a couple of videos when I can. But I definitely thank you for sticking with us, for watching to this point if you're still watching. One other thing I was thinking, down in the comments, if you would be interested to see on this channel content about like our retail business more, would you like to see what the process for creating our ceramic trees are? Would you like to see the setup that's involved when we go on the road? Um, yeah, if you're interested in seeing any of our top-notch stuff, just let us know in the comments. And until later, keep rolling with us.